In August 2017, I took one of these to a local Chevrolet dealership. No, I wasn't going to try and do anything weird with the cars on display. I was taking my license plate, RAV4 EV, off Sparky, my 2002 RAV4 EV, the original first generation battery electric vehicle from Toyota with a little inductive paddle charger. We had got her a couple of years earlier with the expressed intent of seeing how easy it was to own a vintage electric car and use her as a daily driver. And as it turned out, it was kind of hard, especially in Portland where there are lots of hills. And Sparky's battery pack was replaced once, but nickel metal hydride batteries were becoming older and older and older. And while they could be restored to some extent, Sparky was very unwell, and so I needed a regular long-distance car that I could drive. I didn't want to go back to petrol. I've been driving primarily electric since 2006, and so the next option was Art3mis, a 2017 Chevrolet Bolt EV. And today, 5 years later, the screwdriver is back because I'm going to be taking Art3mis's license plates off and putting them on our brand new, almost here, 2022 Ford F-150 Lightning pickup truck, which, in case you are curious, is going to be named Adira Tal. Yes, I am a Star Trek nerd, and yes, I like new Star Trek. Today, we're going to look around Art3mis. We're going to talk about some of the things that I've done with her over the years, some of the issues I've had, and also how sad I am to see her go, because this, honestly, has been one of my most favourite cars to drive, full stop. Stick around and I will tell you why. But first, do make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification. Yes, no songs today, to make sure that you're told when our next video goes live. And if you would like to support us financially, stick around until the end of the show and I will tell you how. I'm going to put the screwdriver down, but let's start by talking financials. So, a lot of people have asked me over the years how much Art3mis cost, and I haven't really discussed it that much on camera. I did trade in my 2002 Toyota RAV4 EV to the dealership for Art3mis. But when we purchased Art3mis, she had been on the dealer lot for a significant amount of time. You see, when Art3mis was brand new, she was loaded off the transporter onto the dealer forecourt, and somebody at the dealership, well, I think they got behind the wheel and thought the car was off. They put their foot on the go pedal and she lurched forwards and ran into a telegraph pole. So she was subjected to front-end damage before she was even sold, and that meant she sat on the lot for some time. Despite the fact that the dealership restored her to as new spec, nobody really wanted to buy her until I came along, and that meant we were able to get a significant discount off list price. When we purchased Art3mis, she was listed at $35,846.18. That included a hitch that we asked to be put on the rear of the car for carrying things like bicycles, bicycle racks, etc., etc. Not a full class 2, class 3 tow hitch, but just a very simple carry a bike, maybe a luggage hitch, that's it. After all of the trade-ins and everything else, the total price we paid was $30,155.14. Now I say we paid, but we actually took out a lease, and we paid $277.96 per month for a 36,000 mile, 3-year lease. I then proceeded to drive Art3mis literally everywhere. She has been to Southern California multiple times. We drove this car to Texas for fully charged live in Austin in 2019. Was it? No, 2020 we drove her there. And for those who don't know, Austin, Texas is a really long way away from Portland, Oregon. So we made that trip in this car. And the net effect of all of that road tripping to Texas, to Southern California, up to Washington, up to Seattle multiple times, down to Reno, down to Las Vegas for CES was that this car had way more miles on it than it should have done at the end of our lease. So what we decided to do, instead of having a massive overage charge for mileage, we decided to take out a loan and buy Art3mis outright. So we took out a $23,228.79 loan. And what we decided to do at that point was, while it was more expensive, and we ended up paying about $420 a month, I rounded up to $420 a month because I just felt like a smart thing. I like rounding things up to the nearest number. That's why I did it. And we have been paying $420 a month for the last 2 years. She is now almost ours completely. There's still some money outstanding on her. But the good news is, because the used car market is in such a terrible state right now, lots of high demand, while our local Ford dealership, who we're buying our F-150 Lightning for, wanted to give us just $14,500 in part exchange, another dealership locally who specialises in selling EVs gave us a really good deal that was significantly more beneficial to us. They're offering us a whole lot more on Art3mis. And so I actually shook the minute they offered me that and agreed that we wouldn't drive Art3mis other than to get her back here and to get her back to that dealership when the truck arrives. Now, we can't just sell her now because she's got a personal plate on, and in Oregon you have to take your personal plate off one vehicle and put it on another. So it's going to be a little bit complicated, but because the truck is just about here, we're ready to do that today. At the rear, you'll notice that we now have a proper tow hitch. It's actually a torque lift central tow hitch made by a company called Torque Lift Central up in the northern part of Washington State. And we used that to replace the original hitch that we got when we bought the car. Now, in the US, Chevrolet did make a hitch that you could put on the bolts, but it was only ever designed for carrying light loads, like a luggage rack on the back of the car, or maybe a hitch mounted cycle carrier. It was never meant for towing things. But as a lot of Bolt owners will tell you, this car has 200 horsepower, bucket loads of torque, and it is more than capable of towing. And so we put a real hitch on the back of the car. It was very easy to do. I did it myself. I put the wiring in. And so Art3mis is going to continue to have that, whoever she goes to next. That's non-standard, but she does have proper hitch wiring and a proper hitch. Now, in the back of the LT, they didn't come with this as standard. This is something that you only used to get with the Premier trim. It's effectively a second load floor that you can put in. This was put in by me. I actually drilled out the holes and put in this extra floor. The LT originally came just like this, but after many years of owning this car, we decided to put that false floor in because it makes it easier loading heavy things in and out, because you don't have to lift it over the lip, you just have to lift it up to the lip of the tailgate, and that's been very useful. In terms of wear and tear, this car has had a pretty tough life. You know, it's got lots of scratches in, and a lot of people have asked me why I didn't have a Tesla Model 3, why I didn't have a Tesla Model Y, and this is one of the reasons. This car is very easy to scratch up and not worry about. I've thrown lots of camera gear in here. We used this car when we moved house. We used this car when we moved the studio. Seats down regularly, carrying things to the tip, and Art3mis has just put up with all of it. And at the rear, nothing has broken. The only real bugbear is this little arrangement here with the load cover, I guess. It's like a thing that I would expect on any car, the parcel shelf, except it's not a parcel shelf. In most markets, you'd get a very solid, nice parcel shelf. But Chevrolet decided to do this fabric thing, and it's the same as the Bolt. And this is the thing that bugs me. These little inserts, they go in to the little recess here, and they always come apart, they always come off. Now you can actually, if you're into 3D printing, you can actually print replacement ones, which I had to do for my wife's Bolt because she had the same problem. But other than that, the rest of this load carrying space is really nice. I guess now is a really good time to talk about how many miles we've put on Art3mis. About 67,000 and change. And in that time, she has been generally pretty reliable. However, obviously there's been a couple of big issues that we've had with this car that we've documented on the channel. The first one is a mysterious clunking coming from the front of the car that just mysteriously vanished the last time the car was at the dealership. So I don't know what was going on, and I don't know how they fixed it, but they did. The other thing was the ABS sensors. Now, a family member, who shall remain nameless, several years ago, while they were still a minor, decided to borrow Mum's car for the day and go out on a little adventure. Thanks to OnStar and a friend who noticed my car driving around the local town at quite high speeds, we were able to get the police involved and get my car recovered. There was a little bit of damage to the car, but nothing too bad. And shortly after that event, the ABS system started to misbehave, and we had a total ABS failure, which we've documented on the channel. That ABS failure was just before the car ran out of its warranty, while it was still under lease, and it required new ABS sensors at the front and a few other things. That seemed to fix the problem, but then it strangely came back a couple of years ago. Driving in heavy rain, suddenly the car started misbehaving, and then last autumn, when I was out driving, I think I'd just gone to the airport, I'd just picked someone up from the airport, it started to do it again. So earlier this year, I took Art3mis to the dealership and I was like, there's still an issue with the ABS, I need you to look at it. It was shortly after the battery was replaced under recall, because this car got a brand new 66 kilowatt hour battery pack as opposed to the original 60 kilowatt hour battery pack because of the whole GM Bolt battery recall, which is why she has the official sticker to say, I've had the battery recall work done. And my local dealership went, looked at the car for a bit, they blew out some of the sensors, and she has been fine since. And so my thought is that we live up here in the country, there are lots of gravel tracks around us. I think we just got a lot of dirt and dust in the car when it doesn't rain, and then when it does rain, there's a lot of dirty, muddy water going past the sensor that gunks everything up. As soon as you've washed the car and got everything clean again, it's fine, and we've had no other problems. So touch wood, although we don't have any wood here, there's been no other issues. The other thing to obviously bear in mind is this is an electric car that has a nice warm space right here, and we live in the country and we have chickens and there are cows next door and the neighbours have got geese, and so there's lots of rodents around, and so we have had issues of rodents getting in here on this little plate here, which is part of the charging and the inverter setup, and just making a nest in the winter. We've had to regularly replace our filters, and as long as we do that, and as long as we keep the car clean, we've not had any issues. Now, we are now using HEPA filters in this car. You can buy HEPA filters for the Bolt, and it makes it so much better when there are forest fires, which obviously here in Oregon happen reasonably quickly. So if you do have a Bolt and you want to have a better cabin experience, do get a HEPA filter. Bosch does one. It's a little bit more expensive than the default one that came with the car. Totally worth it. But as you can see, the rest of the engine bay is totally fine. The battery, this 12-volt battery, is the original 12-volt battery. I think it's probably got maybe a year or so left. And the front end of the car, well, the front end of the car has actually been replaced twice. So I ran into someone and managed to crack the little trim piece here, but then last year we ran into a deer, or rather a deer ran into us. We were driving pretty slowly, but a deer jumped out of the hedge and straight in front of the car, and I hit it, and it somersaulted and landed in the ditch, and it seemed okay. It disappeared off into the bush, but it resulted in several $1,000s of damage to the front of the car. The local Chevrolet dealership has an accident repair specialist. They replaced this light, they replaced this light, they replaced a trim piece, they replaced the whole of the bumper. She's back to new and she looks great. They were going to just respray the bonnet and put it back together, but it turns out that aluminium, which is what this is kind of hard to fix if there is a dent. So they actually ended up getting a brand new bumper and a brand new bonnet and a brand new set of lights. So everything here basically was replaced earlier this year following the deer accident. But yeah, that is pretty much the exterior. So let's have a look inside. Inside Art3mis, well, she does show the signs of having covered 67,198 miles, at least according to the odometer. The majority of those were on her original 60 kilowatt hour battery pack. Because I work from home now, because I haven't been driving to events, she's not put a whole lot of mileage on her new battery pack, which is going to be great for whoever buys her, because she's going to come with an 8-year, 100,000 mile battery warranty, which, you know, is pretty darn cool. Everything inside still works. We did go through a period where the buttons on the steering wheel mysteriously stopped working, but that happened at the same point as we had ABS issues, and I do wonder if there was just a 12-volt battery issue that was a gremlin in the system that has now miraculously solved itself. She's definitely performing perfectly now, so that's the only sort of sensible explanation that I can come up with. The only major criticism I have of the inside of Art3mis is that her central touchscreen display has started to glitch. It doesn't always respond to you pressing it, and that's a fairly common problem with the Chevrolet Bolt EV of this model year. The way to get around it is to reboot the system, not to have your smartphone connected, and then it will start allowing you to touch the buttons again and it will respond to input. Last November, I had to drive up to Seattle for an event, and I spent the entire time fighting with the central touchscreen display. It just did not want to work. But again, it seems to be a lot better now, and I do not understand why. It's a known issue with Bolt EVs, and I did buy a replacement screen to put in, so everything's working now, so that's a good thing. In terms of seats, the cloth seating in this car is not quite as comfortable as the leather seating, but it's been really great, very stain resistant. I have a carpet cleaner, so I fairly regularly clean the inside of the car. I'm kind of quite fastidious about how I keep my cars because I get to drive new cars a lot of the time, and so I've got used to cars looking and feeling nice inside. So that's definitely something that I've been particularly careful to do. But there's a few kind of issues throughout the car that any car that's done this number of miles would have. The steering wheel is starting to wear in a few places. The buttons have got that glossed over feel that you get when your thumbs have pressed them lots and lots of times. But other than that, the rest of the car is really good. As I've already said, we replaced the interior cabin filter with a HEPA filter, and that really did make a massive difference to how this car smells and feels inside. It helps block odours from outside, and it just makes the interior a whole lot nicer experience. Is this a $30,000 trim? Not really. I mean, at the time, you were paying more because it was an electric vehicle. This feels like a $20,000 car would feel after the same amount of time and a similar number of miles. But the car right now is charged to Hilltop Reserve mode, so it's like 90% full. I live on top of a hill. It's saying minimum of 155 miles. I'm probably going to get 190 miles of range out of it, or ideal conditions 225. Now the EPA on this car now, since the battery replacement, is about 250-ish miles. So I should be getting more, but the weather's been abysmal. There's been lots of rain, and we've been driving this car until last week on winter tyres. The Nokian Hakkapeliitta R3s were brilliant last winter. We had lots of snow up here in the mountains, and the car had no issues, didn't get stuck at all. And one of my favourite things about the Bolt is that it has instant torque, and it doesn't nanny you, and you can spin the wheels if you want to. and you can chirp the tyres. It's not like a lot of EVs where they kind of dole out the torque very gently until you're at a higher speed. This car just goes, okay, you want all of the front wheel drive power? There you go. And the result is a car that drives very much like a hot hatch. It's very planted. You can throw it into a corner, which is one of the reasons why I like living out here. And the car just behaves itself pretty well. On the freeway, it's a little bit noisy. 70 miles an hour, it's a bit noisier. When I was in Texas, we got to drive this on 130 at 85, I think, 80, 85. And she coped, so I can't complain. So I guess all that's left for me to do is to take my license plate off and get it ready for Adira Tal, my F-150 Lightning pickup truck. Now, a lot of people have asked, why am I keeping this plate? Well, partly because I'm kind of attached to Floofy, but also it feels nice to just reuse something to remind myself of the wonderful, amazing experiences that I've had with Art3mis. She's taken me to Texas. She's taken me to California multiple times. She's towed little tiny camping trailers behind herself. She's helped me with gardening and huge amounts of soil and compost that I need. She's helped us carry loads of wood to and from the various shops that we use for wood, and allowed us to build everything from our bed to our chicken coop to shelving units in the house. She's really been a workhorse. She's not just been a city car. And if there's one thing that this car has taught me, it's that when someone tells you that something is a city car, don't believe them until you try it out for yourself. Because this car, so much more than a city car. This car has been a long distance traveller. Sure, I've had to stop and take a little bit longer to charge at rapid charging stations because she maxes out at 55 kilowatts. But she's never left me super stranded at the side of the road, other than when she had the ABS issues. That was kind of scary. And once I was stranded at a rapid charger because the rapid charger was offline and I couldn't be bothered to check. But the rest of the time, this car and I, we've had some big trips. I'd love to keep her, but now Transport Evolved has grown. We've got more people on staff. It's just not practical to carry 4 people plus a whole load of camera gear in a car that was designed for just 2 people plus maybe their kids. So the F-150 Lightning is a smart choice. But I'm going to be really sad to see Art3mis go, and I hope that whoever takes her into their life will look after her. That is it for today's video. Thank you for joining me. I know it's something that's slightly different, but keep your eyes peeled because we have an unboxing video coming very soon. If you get my drift, we're going to be unboxing something blue and big and not bigger on the inside, which is unfortunate. But as we're outside, I don't have my teleprompter, so I'm going to be reading the wonderful list of names of people who support the channel off my phone. I hope you'll forgive me. That is obviously it for today. Leave your thoughts below or in our free to join Discord chat room. There are links in the video description. And if you really liked it, why not leave us a super thanks? Because it's super easy to do, and everything you leave does go to help the channel make more awesome content. If you want a news roundup, do check out our weekend news roundup show, which is on this channel every Saturday, all being well. Or maybe it's a Sunday, because some of you might be in Australia, and at that point, it's definitely Sunday when it goes live. But if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel and our other channel, Transport Evolved Take 2. And be sure to hit the bell for subscribe and notification, because sometimes YouTube doesn't tell you that stuff is around. Thanks on behalf of the entire TE crew go to the folks on my right for being our $15 to $49 a month special supporters. Special thanks to our $50 a month patrons: Chris Maxwell, Pedro European Hero, Patrick Boyarski, Bennett Elder, Brian Newton, Dave Kitchen, Michael Goad, Ricky Leon, Andrew Martin, Guido Drahota, Brophy Wolf, Tesla in the Gong, Gordon C, Stephen O'Donoghue, Carl Hodgson, Anthony Coates, Ray Jean Fellows, Jim Burness, Chris Centaur, Chris and Michael Johnson, Peter Dillinger and Denny Hyde, and of course our deepest gratitude to our $100 a month supporters. They are Anonymous Freak, Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, Roy Litwin, Joe Bresney, Reed R, JP Fagerback, Russ, Will Graylin, Matthew Drobnak, John Lyons, Andrew Glenn, Paul Conway, Laura Reynolds, Ellery Hensley, and last but not least, Ian, who I think actually met this car once. I think Ian did actually meet this car, so there you go, Ian. Yeah, doubly special. But if you would like to join the amazing list of supporters, you can do so by following the links below. You can support us on Patreon, you can hit the join button on YouTube, you can send us some Ko-fi, you can visit our swag store. If you want to be really tech and not very environmentally friendly, you can also send us a Bitcoin. I'll be back soon with more amazing content, but until then, thanks for joining me, and as always, keep evolving.